everybody. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm not yelling too much either. Hey, we're good? We're good? Okay, good. So I'm a former neuroscientist, and I vividly remember one of the most formative moments of my career to date. I was in the final year of my undergrad, and I observed a behavior experiment where mice were lowered into a large paddling pool on stilts. And this piece of equipment is called the Morris Water Maze, and it's used to assess spatial learning and memory in rodents. I noticed that the mice were getting really stressed out about this whole thing. You see, the water maze is typically used with rats, who are natural swimmers and they take to it very readily. Not quite so with mice, who get stressed out easily when they're swimming for more than just brief bursts of time. And I know that when I get stressed, I can't learn very effectively at all, and in fact I get quite forgetful. So I wondered what we were really assessing if we're asking stressed out mice to learn spatial cues. And this led me to ask two questions that set the very foundation for the rest of my career. Why are we doing this? And should we be doing this? After my neuroscience degree, my academic career took turns through applied animal behavior and welfare, and then applied ethics. And on reflection, I've been part of different scientific disciplines that have very different approaches towards animals. There is the cognitive ethology, animal behavior, and animal welfare side, where science is used to better understand who animals are. And animals are acknowledged as being sentient, with their own personalities, cultures, likes, dislikes, pleasures, frustrations, joys, relationships, and so on. And as a key example, at the time of my master's degree, there was a hot debate in the literature about whether fish are sentient and feel pain. To settle the debate, animal behaviorists set out to understand fish better. And now, at least among my colleagues, there is more or less consensus that fish are indeed sentient and they feel pain. And even more, many species of fish develop complex cultural traditions in their communities. Many have the capacity to hold categories and concepts in their minds. And many can form reciprocal relationships, not only with their own species, but with others too. On the other side of my scientific life was biomedical science, which tends to see and treat animals as tools and commodities. It reduces them to their parts and often harms them in the name of science. Animals or their bodies are experimental units, and even though it is widely acknowledged that animals can feel pain, a review paper released just last week showed that a very small percentage of the studies that were reviewed gave pain relief to the animals that were involved. So when I think about how to reconcile these two different scientific lives that I've lived, I think science itself can help inform our practices as scientists. And this is the work I've come to be most passionate about, the intersection of science, ethics, and policy. I work a lot with school students these days, and in grades ranging from 6 through 12, their teachers often do animal dissections with them to learn about body systems, anatomy, adaptation to function, and so on. And there's a seemingly deeply held assumption that using real animal bodies or organs is the best way to learn about those things. I've had many conversations with teachers who hold an assumption that the real-life, hands-on, immersive, and visceral educational experience of dissecting real animal bodies is an irreplaceable part of early science education. But as we all know, one of the key tenets of science is to test our assumptions, and whether students learn better using real animals compared to the myriad non-animal alternatives that are available is an empirically testable question. So I tried to find academic studies that have tested this very assumption. I found 50 original research articles where researchers have evaluated student learning after using either traditional dissection or non-animal teaching methods. In 46 of these 50 studies, the students did just as well as, and in many cases better, when using non-animal teaching methods compared to dissection. So, existing evidence supports a shift towards the use of non-animal methods for education. However, 79% of teachers in BC still do dissection in their classes. And while many are in favor of using non-animal alternatives, there does seem to be an unwillingness to give up dissection completely. But if we are passionate about science and we use the scientific method to test our assumptions, then when sufficient evidence comes in, we need to be willing to let that data shift our actions, both personal and political. In preclinical animal research, and that is animal studies done prior to clinical trials in humans to test the safety and effectiveness of new drugs, there's a similar story. Emerging evidence from across a whole host of different biomedical disciplines is starting to show that the translation rate from animal research to the development of new drugs in humans happens just 0 to 8% of the time. The ethical foundation of animal-based science involves a balancing of benefits against harms, and to justify animal research, the balance must be in favor of the benefits. An average translation rate of 0 to 8% does little to convince me that the balance of harms against benefits is in the right direction. Fortunately, there are new groundbreaking non-animal alternatives that are being developed at a rapid pace. In the past few years, we've seen the development of organs on a chip, 3D bioprinting, mini brains, epi-skin, computer simulations of drug response, and so on. And in fact, just a couple of weeks ago, a paper was published to show that a complex computer simulation of a new heart drug was significantly more predictive of risk than traditional animal models. So again, if we are passionate about science, we should let this emerging evidence start to guide our research and funding decisions to develop more alternatives that hold the promise of being more predictive of drug safety and effectiveness than traditional animal models. So as we gather here in collective celebration of science today, I wonder if we can also be self-reflective enough to check in with our assumptions, scientific enough to test them, and then be willing to let that evidence guide our practices and policies, no matter what discipline we work in. Because we don't operate on a science at all costs model, and nor should we. And as passionate scientists, as compassionate scientists, the question that should always remain at the forefront of our practice is, we can, but should we? Thanks.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and thank you for reminding us all that we need to be using evidence to inform and change our behaviors when the evidence is in the favor of that. So next up, last but definitely not least, we have Michael Unger. He is the program coordinator at HR Macmillan Space Center. He's also the nerd boss at the Nerd Night Vancouver chapter, which you should